Captain Lee Ji-won was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alarm shattered the peaceful silence of the patrol ship, Seoul's Pride. The bridge lights flashed red as his communications officer, Lieutenant Choi Dae-ho, looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, we're receiving a distress beacon from Saebyok Colony. Signal strength is strange, sir. It's very weak." Ji-won set down his cup and moved to the captain's chair. Saebyok Colony was one of humanity's most successful outer rim settlements, home to over 2 million Korean families who had traveled across the galaxy to build new lives among the stars. They grew the best space rice in 3 sectors, and their children's laughter could be heard echoing through the biodomes from orbit. "How long since their last regular check-in?" Ji-won asked. 72 hours, sir. They missed their scheduled communication window. Something cold settled in Ji-won's stomach. In 20 years of service, he had never known a colony to miss a peep check-in without good reason. Set course for Saebyok, maximum speed. The 3-day journey felt like 3 years. Ji-won found himself pacing the bridge, unable to shake the feeling that something terrible waited for them. His crew worked in unusual silence, sensing their captain's unease. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Saebyok system, what they saw made everyone freeze. The planet looked wrong. Where green continents and blue oceans should have sparkled, there was only brown and grey. No lights twinkled on the night side. No spacecraft moved between the orbital stations, which hung dark and lifeless like broken toys. "Life signs?" Ji-won whispered. Ensign Yu Nari, barely 22 years old and fresh from the academy, checked her sensors 3 times before answering. "Captain, I'm reading 0 human life signs on the surface. The orbital habitats are empty." As they moved closer, the horror became clear. Saebyok Colony had been systematically destroyed. The cities weren't just bombed. They were carved up with geometric precision, like someone had used a massive laser to draw patterns across the continents. The beautiful farms that once fed half the sector were now perfect spirals of ash and glass. "Take us down to landing site Alpha," Ji-won ordered, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. The shuttle landed in what used to be New Busan, the colony's capital. Through the viewport, they could see the remnants of homes, schools and parks, all reduced to the same crystallized ash. The air was breathable, but it tasted of death and something else, something metallic and wrong. Lieutenant Kim Soo-young, the team's forensics expert, knelt beside what had once been a playground. "Captain, these burn patterns, they're too precise. 4 conventional weapons. Whatever did this used energy beams that could cut through matter at the molecular level." They searched for hours, finding only silence and ash. Then, from deep beneath the ruins of the mining complex, they heard it. A faint tapping sound, rhythmic and desperate. Someone was alive down there. It took 6 hours to dig through the collapsed tunnels. Park Min-ho emerged blinking into the dim light, his mining suit scorched but intact. He was 35 years old, a father of 2 young daughters who had been visiting their grandmother in the city when the attack began. "Water," he croaked, and Ji-won personally handed him a bottle. After Min-ho had drunk and rested, he began to speak. His voice was steady, but his hands shook constantly. "They came at dawn on Tuesday, ships like nothing I've ever seen, crystalline, beautiful in a terrible way. They didn't respond to any of our communications. Governor An tried to surrender, tried to negotiate. They just started." Min-ho stared at the ground. "The beams came from orbit first, perfect lines of light that cut through our cities like they were made of paper. Then the smaller ships landed. The beings inside weren't wearing armor. They didn't need it. They looked like walking crystals, tall and sharp, with voices that sounded like breaking glass." "What did they want?" Ji-won asked quietly. "Nothing. That's what made it so horrible. They weren't angry. They weren't cruel. They were bored, like they were following a checklist. I watched from the mine entrance as they herded families into groups and finished them with those light weapons. Children, grandparents, everyone." Minho's voice dropped to a whisper. "They broadcast a message on all frequencies while they worked. Said they were the Velthak Empire, called us inferior carbon-based life forms, and announced that our sector now belonged to their dominion. Then they did something to the bodies, turned them all to crystal like trophies. How did you survive?" I was deep in Mineshaft 7 when it started. The tunnels protected me from their scanning beams. I could hear everything through the emergency radio. 3 days of systematic extermination. They took their time, Captain. They weren't in any hurry. G1 felt something break inside his chest. 2 million people gone like they never existed. Children who would never grow up. Families who would never reunite. Dreams turned to crystallized ash. They left a message, Minho continued, pulling out a small recording device. They wanted us to know who did this. The recorded voice was like the sound of wind through broken glass. Carbon-based insects eliminated. Velthak superiority established. This sector now serves the Eternal Empire. Captain Lee Ji-won looked up at the dark sky where enemy ships had hung like death itself and made a silent promise to every soul lost on Sabyok colony. The emergency session of the Human Defense Council convened at 800 hours Earth Standard Time. Director Kim Tae-hyung sat at the head of the obsidian table, his weathered face betraying no emotion as Captain Lee Ji-won finished his report about Sabyok colony. The holographic images of crystallized remains floated above the table like ghosts demanding justice. 2.1 million souls, whispered Council Member Park Ji-soo, her voice breaking. Gone in 3 days. Director Kim had seen humanity's darkest hours during the Resource Wars, the AI Rebellion, and the Great Plague of 2387. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. He stood slowly, his 60-year-old frame carrying the weight of an entire species' future. "Gentlemen, ladies," he said, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "Today, humanity stops hiding." He walked to the massive viewing screen that showed Earth's blue marble spinning peacefully in space. For 2 centuries we have lived a lie. We told the galaxy we were explorers, traders, peaceful settlers spreading slowly among the stars. We built our little colonies, sent our merchant ships, and played the role of harmless newcomers. Kim turned to face the council, his eyes burning with purpose. But we never forgot the lesson of our own history. Peace is a luxury that must be protected by strength. While the galaxy saw us as weak, we were preparing. His finger hovered over a red button that had never been pressed. "I hereby authorize Protocol Genesis. God help us all." The button clicked down with a sound that would echo through galactic history. Across human space, dormant systems awakened. On Luna, beneath the tourist attractions and research facilities, massive blast doors opened to reveal shipyards that had been hidden for 200 years. The moon itself began to unfold like a mechanical flower, exposing construction bays that stretched for kilometers. Admiral Han Sumin stood on the bridge of what everyone believed was a deep space research station near Jupiter. Around her, the walls retracted to reveal that the entire station was actually the command center of humanity's greatest secret. Through the massive viewing ports, she watched as the asteroid field surrounding Jupiter began to move. "My God," breathed Commander Lim Hyunwoo, her second in command. "They're not asteroids at all." One by one, the rocky surfaces cracked open like eggs. Inside each hollowed-out asteroid was a battleship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. These weren't the small patrol vessels that humanity had shown to other species. These were leviathans of war, each one the size of a city, and bristling with weapons that made conventional armaments look like children's toys. The ships emerged with silent grace, their quantum drives creating ripples in space-time itself. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering, built with technologies that humanity had developed in secret while pretending to struggle with basic space travel. "Fleet status report," Admiral Han ordered, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was witnessing. 700,000 vessels responding to awakening protocols, reported Lieutenant Colonel Bae Seung-min from the Communications Center. All systems showing green across the board. The fleet is ready for deployment. But these weren't just ships, they were monuments to human determination. The flagship, Sabyok's Vengeance, was a kilometer-long dreadnought whose hull bore the names of every soul lost in the colony's destruction. Its sister ships carried names that spoke of humanity's greatest hopes and darkest memories. Never Again, Last Stand, Children's Dream, Mother's Tears. In the Centauri system, what appeared to be a small mining operation suddenly revealed itself as a massive fleet assembly point. Ships that had been masquerading as cargo haulers shed their disguises, unfolding into battle cruisers armed with planet-cracking weapons. Throughout the Outer Rim, humanity's research stations came alive. Each one had been a carefully designed facade, hiding production facilities that had worked tirelessly for 2 centuries. Robot workers that the galaxy believed were mining, equipment were actually constructing instruments of war. Admiral Han walked through the command deck of Sebyok's Vengeance, watching her crew prepare for what would be the largest military operation in galactic history. These weren't regular Navy personnel. They were volunteers who had trained their entire lives for this moment, the children and grandchildren of families who had sworn that humanity would never again be caught defenseless. "Admiral," called out Navigation Officer Yoon Chae-young, "all fleet elements report ready for hyperspace jump. Destination coordinates locked for Veltak space." The scale of what they had built was staggering. 700,000 battleships, each one capable of taking on entire enemy fleets. Hidden shipyards that had operated in secret, while humanity played the role of peaceful explorers. Technologies that would shock the galaxy. Quantum armor that could phase through normal matter. Weapons that could tear holes in space itself. AI systems that made enemy computers look like pocket calculators. But the most incredible thing wasn't the ships or the weapons. It was the secret that humanity had kept for 200 years. While other species fought and conquered openly, humans had learned a different lesson from their bloody history. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from being underestimated. Director Kim's final message to the fleet was simple. You carry more than weapons into the darkness. You carry the hopes of every human child who deserves to grow up without fear. Make the Veltak Empire understand that they chose the wrong species to treat as insects. As 700,000 battleships prepared to jump into hyperspace, the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be harmless. War Commander Zethvak floated within his crystal throne, his body a magnificent sculpture of living diamond that caught and refracted the light of 1,000 conquered suns. The throne room of his flagship Eternal Dominion stretched for nearly a kilometer, its walls made from the compressed remains of entire civilizations. Each crystal panel told a story of victory, of species that had dared to resist the Veltak Empire and paid the ultimate price. The War Commander's voice resonated like the sound of glaciers breaking as he addressed his gathered fleet admirals. 30,000 years, he said, his crystal fingers drumming against the armrest of his throne. 30 millennia of perfect conquest. We have consumed the life force of 10,000 species, turned their worlds into feeding grounds for our ships. Around him, his subordinates stood in perfect formation. Unlike their commander, these Veltak warriors were smaller, their crystal bodies sharp and angular like living weapons. Their eyes glowed with the absorbed energy of countless dead worlds, and when they spoke, their voices created harmonies that could shatter stone. Fleet Admiral Kenthvar stepped forward, his crystalline form reflecting the holographic star maps that surrounded them. Commander, our harvest of the human colony proceeds as planned. The life energy from 2 million carbon-based organisms has been successfully absorbed into our ship matrices. Their essence now powers 17 of our destroyer-class vessels. Zethvak nodded approvingly. The Sebyok colony had been a routine operation, barely worth his personal attention. The humans had died so easily, their soft flesh offering no resistance to Veltak crystal weapons. Their screams had been particularly nourishing. Fear and despair always made the life energy more potent. And what of the remaining human settlements? The War Commander asked, studying the tactical displays that showed humanity's pathetically small territory. 15 systems, a handful of colonies, barely 3 billion souls in total. It would take his harvesting fleets perhaps a week to consume them all. Our intelligence indicates they possess approximately 400 military vessels, reported Scoutmaster Veltheon, his smaller crystal body pulsing with gathered data. Primitive fusion drives, basic energy weapons, metal hulls that our cutting beams can slice through like vapor. They appear to be preparing some form of defensive posture, but it is inadequate. Zethvak's laugh sounded like a landslide in a crystal cave. The Veltak had perfected the art of consumption over millennia. Their ships were living beings, crystalline entities that fed on the life force of organic species. When they conquered a world, they didn't just kill its inhabitants, they absorbed their very souls, using that energy to grow stronger, faster, more deadly. His flagship alone had consumed the life force of over 50 million beings. The screams of the dying Zephyrian bird people still echoed in its crystal matrix, along with the final thoughts of the aquatic Mertandians and the desperate prayers of a dozen other extinct races. Each death made the ship more powerful, more alive. "Tell me about these humans," Zethvak commanded, settling deeper into his throne. "What makes them think they can resist us where others have failed?" Fleet Admiral Kenthvar projected a holographic image of human space. "They are a young species, Commander. They achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries ago. Their technology is crude, their ships small and fragile. They seem to specialize in trade and agriculture rather than warfare. They have shown remarkable reproduction rates," added Scoutmaster Velthion. "Their colonies grow quickly and they adapt well to different planetary environments. This makes them excellent harvest candidates, high population density, strong life force, minimal military resistance." Zethvak studied the humans' pathetic fleet formations through his crystal sensors. Their ships moved so slowly, their formations so predictable. They reminded him of the Talkari, a peaceful species that had tried to negotiate even as Veltak harvesting beams drained the life from their children, or the Vorthian tree people who had actually sent ambassadors to discuss surrender terms right up until the moment their homeworld's atmosphere was converted into crystalline energy. "Have they attempted communication?" he asked. "Yes, Commander. They broadcast surrender offers, peace negotiations, even tribute arrangements. Standard behavior for inferior species facing extinction." The War Commander's crystal form pulsed with amusement. They always tried to negotiate. They never understood that the Veltak didn't want their resources, their territory, or their cooperation. They wanted their life essence, their very souls. Death was not a byproduct of Veltak conquest. It was the entire point. What of their military response to the colony's destruction? "Minimal, Commander. A single investigation vessel discovered the ruins and retreated. They appear to be consolidating their remaining forces around their core worlds, but our projections indicate they can field no more than 500 vessels total." Zethvak rose from his throne, his 2-meter crystal form reflecting the light of the conquered stars around them. His empire stretched across 80,000 systems, each one drained of life and converted into energy for the Velthak war machine. His fleets numbered in the millions, each ship a living weapon powered by the screams of the dead. "Prepare the harvesting armadas," he commanded. "I want their core worlds surrounded within the cycle. Begin with their outer colonies. Let them watch as we consume their people system by system. Fear makes the life force more concentrated." His subordinates bowed in perfect unison, their crystal bodies creating a symphony of submission. As they prepared to carry out his orders, Zethvak allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans would join the countless other species whose essence powered his empire. Their screams would make his ships stronger, their despair would fuel his weapons. In 30,000 years of conquest, no species had ever truly surprised him. Why should these primitive carbon-based life forms be any different? The galaxy held its breath for exactly 0.3 seconds as 700,000 human battleships materialized from hyperspace in perfect synchronization. What the Velthak had thought was empty space suddenly erupted with the largest military force in galactic history. Admiral Han Sumin felt the deck vibrate beneath her feet as Sabiok's vengeance dropped into normal space above the Velthak throne. World of Kethmoran. Through the massive viewing screen, she could see the crystalline spires of the enemy capital gleaming like deadly jewels against the planet's red sky. "All fleet elements report status," she commanded, her voice carrying across quantum communication channels to 700,000 ship captains spread across 1,200 Velthak systems. The responses came back in waves. 7th Fleet. In position over Veltharos. 92nd Squadron engaging enemy forces at Zethmandor. Strike Group Alpha has the Velthak shipyard surrounded. What the Velthak discovered in that terrifying moment was that humanity had never been confined to 15 systems. While the Empire had been watching those obvious colonies, human ships had been secretly spreading across the galaxy for 2 centuries. Every asteroid belt, every nebula, every seemingly empty region of space had hidden human installations. "Target their command ship," Admiral Han ordered, pointing at the massive crystal dreadnought that dominated Kethmaran's orbit. The Eternal Dominion was beautiful in its terrible way, a living mountain of diamond and death that had consumed the souls of 50 million beings. Lieutenant Commander Song Minsu, the weapons officer, activated the quantum cannon arrays. "Weapons charged and ready, Admiral. Targeting the enemy flagship's crystal matrix core." The first shot from Saebyok's vengeance wasn't just a weapon discharge, it was a declaration of war that lit up the entire system. The quantum beam struck the Velthak flagship's crystal hull with the force of a dying star, and something impossible happened. The living crystal began to crack. For 30,000 years, Velthak crystal technology had been invincible. Their ships were alive, powered by the stolen life force of conquered species, able to repair themselves and grow stronger with each victory. But humanity's quantum weapons didn't just damage the crystal, they disrupted the very bonds that held the absorbed souls in place. War Commander Zethvak felt his throne room shudder as the quantum beam struck his ship. Around him, the crystal walls that had been built from compressed civilizations began to scream. Not the screams of his crew, but the voices of every soul his ship had ever consumed. The Zephyrian bird people, the aquatic Mertandians, the tree-dwelling Vorthians, all of them crying out as their stolen essence was suddenly freed. "Impossible," he whispered, his crystal form flickering as power fluctuations ran through his ship. "What are these weapons?" Across the galaxy, the same scene played out in system after system. Human battleships appeared like ghosts made solid, their quantum cannons turning Velthak crystal ships into prisons of liberated souls. The Empire's living vessels, which had seemed invincible for millennia, began to tear themselves apart as the life force they had stolen fought to escape. Captain Park Ji-hoon commanded the destroyer Never Forget in the Veltharos system. His ship was small compared to the massive Veltak harvesters, but his quantum torpedoes punched through crystal hulls like they were made of glass. "This is for every child who never got to grow up," he said as his weapons found their mark. The Velthak had made one critical mistake in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed that because humans were young in space, they were primitive, in all ways. They never imagined that a species could develop quantum manipulation technology while pretending to struggle with basic fusion drives. Every human ship broadcast the same message as they fought. Park Min-ho's testimony from the ruins of Saebyok colony played across every frequency, his voice carrying the pain of 2 million lost souls. Then came the declaration that would echo through history. "This is for Saebyok. This is for every world you took. This is the end of your empire." Admiral Han watched as her fleet tore through the Velthak defenses like a sword through paper. The enemy's crystal ships, which had terrorized the galaxy for 30 millennia, were revealed to be hollow shells dependent on stolen power. When that power was disrupted, they became nothing more than beautiful, fragile sculptures. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Velthak command ship," reported Communications Officer Lee Young-ho. "Audio only, but the signal is degrading. Rapidly. Put it through." War Commander Zethvak's voice came through the speakers, but it was no longer the confident roar of a conqueror. It was the broken whisper of a being who had just realized that his entire civilization was built on a foundation of sand. "How?" he asked, his crystal form flickering on the transmission. "How did you hide so many ships? How did you develop such weapons? We watched your systems for centuries." Admiral Han's response was calm, final, and devastating. "You watched 15 systems. We built in 3,000. You saw what we wanted you to see while we prepared for this day. Every human who died at Saebyok colony died so that billions more could live free." The transmission cut off as the Eternal Dominion began to break apart. 30,000 years of stolen souls erupted from its crystal matrix like a rainbow of liberated light. Each freed spirit rose into space, finally at peace after millennia of imprisonment. Across the galaxy, the Veltak Empire was dying. There, ships cracked like eggshells, Their weapons failed. Their crystal cities shattered as the foundation of stolen life force was suddenly torn away. In a single day, humanity had ended an empire that had terrorized the galaxy since before Earth's. First civilizations had learned to write. The stars went dark with Velthak crystal ships, but they blazed bright with the light of freedom as humanity's hidden fleet revealed itself to a galaxy that would never again underestimate the determination of those who choose to protect the innocent. Admiral Lee Jiwon stood on the observation deck of New Sabyok's orbital station, watching something that 6 months ago would have been impossible. Below him, the planet that had been nothing but ash and crystallized death was alive again. Green forests stretched across continents where geometric burn patterns had once scarred the Earth. Blue oceans sparkled where molten glass had pooled, in crater lakes. The sound of children's laughter drifted up from the agricultural domes. Korean families who had volunteered to resettle the world were building new homes, new dreams, new lives from the ashes of tragedy. Their voices carried hope where once there had been only silence. "Hard to believe it's the same world," said Governor Park Min-ho, joining the Admiral at the viewing window. The former mining engineer had changed over the past months. The haunted look in his eyes had been replaced by something stronger. Purpose. "The terraforming crews did incredible work," Jiwon replied. "I've never seen dead soil brought back to life so quickly." Park Min-ho smiled, watching a group of children chase each other through the gardens. "It's not just the terraforming technology, it's hope. When people believe they're building something permanent, something safe, they work miracles." Together, they walked to the memorial at the center of the station. A single black stone, perfectly smooth, bore the names of every soul lost in the original Sabyok colony. 2,100,000 names carved in flowing Korean script, each one representing a life cut short, a dream destroyed, a family torn apart. Fresh flowers surrounded the memorial, not synthetic ones but real blossoms grown in the planet's new soil. Families came here daily, not just to mourn, but to remember why humanity had revealed its true strength to the galaxy. "Any word from the outer expeditions?" Min-ho asked. Jiwon activated his wrist communicator, and holographic reports filled the air around them. Captain Seo Ha-young found another batch of survivors in the Kepler sector, 30,000 Zephyrian, refugees who had been hiding in asteroid belts for over a century. Commander Yoon Taemin's fleet is helping them rebuild their homeworld. The scope of what humanity had discovered was staggering. The Velthak Empire had been consuming species for so long that the galaxy had forgotten how many civilizations had once thrived among the stars. Hidden survivors emerged from every corner of space, beings who had spent generations hiding from crystal ships that could drain the life from entire worlds. "And the restoration project?" "Ahead of schedule," Jiwon said proudly. Fleet Admiral Kang Minju reports that her engineering corps has successfully restored 17 dead worlds this month. The Andromedans are learning to fly again, literally. Their wings are growing back now that they're not being harvested for life energy. Through the station's massive windows, they could see humanity's gift to the galaxy in action. The 700,000 battleships that had once been instruments of war were now tools of healing. Each vessel carried advanced terraforming equipment, medical, supplies, and most importantly, protection for species that had forgotten what it meant to live without fear. The Sabyok's Vengeance hung in orbit nearby, but it looked different now. Its weapon arrays had been partially converted to construction equipment. Its hangar bays were filled with medical shuttles instead of fighters. The ship that had led humanity's greatest battle was now leading its greatest mercy mission. "Admiral," came a voice from behind them. Lieutenant Commander Cho Yun-woo approached with a datapad. "Priority message from Director Kim on Earth." Jiwon accepted the pad and read the message aloud. "Galactic Council has officially recognized humanity as a guardian species. 43 civilizations have requested protection agreements. The Mertandian survivors have offered to share their waterworld terraforming technology in exchange for fleet protection." Park Min-ho shook his head in amazement. 6 months ago, most of the galaxy thought we were primitive traders. Now they're asking us to be their protectors. "We always were protectors," Jiwon said quietly. We just kept it hidden until we were forced to reveal ourselves. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Admiral Han Su-min's image appeared as a hologram, her command ship's bridge visible behind her. Ji-won, good to see you. How's the new colony? Growing stronger every day. What's your status? We've just finished escorting a convoy of Talkari refugees to their new homeworld. Turns out they're incredible artists. They've already started carving memorial sculptures for all the species the Velthak consumed. It's beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. In the background of Han's transmission, they could see members of different alien species working together on her bridge. A tall, graceful Zephyrian operated communications equipment with wing-like appendages, while a crystalline being, not Velthak, but a peaceful species called the Luminar, managed navigation systems. The galaxy is changing, Han continued. Species that had been hiding from the Velthak for millennia are finally coming out of the shadows. They're sharing technologies, forming alliances, building something better than what existed before. Any signs of remaining Velthak forces? None, Han said firmly. Scout Commander Park Seo-jun's deep space patrols have confirmed it. The Empire is extinct. Every crystal ship has been accounted for. Every conquered world has been liberated. 30,000 years of terror ended in a single day. As if responding to her words, the memorial stone began to glow softly. The names carved into its surface seemed to pulse with gentle light, not the harsh, consuming glow of Velthak crystal, but something warm and alive. They're at peace now, Minho whispered, touching the stone gently. All of them. The 2.1 million from Cybiok, the 50 billion from other worlds, the countless species that the Velthak consumed over the millennia. They can finally rest. Ji-won looked out at the stars, where humanity's protective fleet moved between systems like guardians of light. Director Kim Tae-hyung's final log entry had become humanity's new motto. We prefer peace, but we are very, very good at war. The galaxy would never again mistake humanity's desire for peace as weakness. Hidden among the stars, 3,000 installations continued their quiet work, not building weapons of conquest, but tools of protection, ready to respond if another threat emerged, ready to ensure that no species would ever again face extinction. Alone, children played in gardens built on worlds that had been dead for centuries. Former refugees now worked alongside humans to explore new frontiers and build new civilizations. The stars, once dark with the threat of crystal ships, now